Welcome to the deep dive. Sometimes you stumble across a concept that just rewires your brain a bit, makes you look at the world kind of differently. Today, we're diving into one of those, the breakaway civilization hypothesis. Let's really dig into what this intriguing idea is all about. Okay, so our sources for this deep dive, they come from a pretty rigorous academic analysis of the hypothesis itself. Drawing on the work of the key proponents who've really shaped this theory over time, our mission for you, our listener, is to basically extract the most important nuggets of knowledge and help you understand this intricate narrative, sort of offering you a shortcut to being truly well-informed on this pretty complex topic.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating here is how this hypothesis, it really attempts to function as a kind of grand unifying theory, It tries to connect what seem like completely disparate global events, phenomena into one coherent explanation. So we'll explore its proposed origins, how it supposedly sustains itself, and how it interacts with mainstream society, all according to the theory, of course.
Right. So at its core, the breakaway civilization hypothesis posits the existence of a parallel human society. I mean, imagine a shadow world, one that's allegedly far more advanced technologically, operating with its own set of laws, its own ethics, completely separate from our mainstream constitutional rules and, moral boundaries. And according to this theory, this hidden society doesn't just exist alongside us. It supposedly exploits mainstream civilization, uses it as a resource base, and increasingly leverages artificial intelligence, AI, for social control. So it's not just presented as some secret part of an existing government. No, it's framed as a de facto sovereign system,
Yeah.
a state within a state, essentially.
Exactly. And proponents argue that the genesis of this profound schism, this deep divide, it traces all the way back to the post-World War II era. They point specifically to the National Security Act of 1947 as the pivotal event, the thing that enabled its formation.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. The hypothesis itself is what academic sources call a syncretic grand narrative. Think of syncretic like weaving together different threads. It's this huge overarching story built from the distinct yet interlocking arguments of several key figures. Each person adds a crucial piece to this complex puzzle. It's not just one person's idea.
Right. And when we talk about these key figures, three main contributors really emerge from the literature we looked at. First, there's Richard M. Dolan. He's widely credited with actually coining the term breakaway civilization. His research heavily focuses on a secret space program and a technologically advanced societal structure, all linked, he argues, to the persistent UFO phenomenon.
Okay, Dolan. Secret space program. Got it.
Then you have Joseph P. Farrell. He provides a detailed historical and geopolitical origin story. Farrell argues for what he calls a post-WWII Nazi international. This entity, he posits, established a hidden global financial system, supposedly capitalized by things like, war plunder, Nazi counterfeiting operations.
Wow.
And this system, Farrell claims, then funded suppressed technologies, including incredibly powerful geophysical weapons. Think things that could manipulate weather or even trigger earthquakes.
Geophysical weapons.
Yeah.
That's a whole other level.
Yeah.
Okay, who's the third?
And finally, Catherine Austin Fitts. She's actually a former Assistant Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. She articulates the alleged financial engine behind all of this, citing a multi-trillion-dollar black budget, that's trillion with a T, from undocumented or unauthorized spending
Right.
within the U.S. Department of Defense, the DoD, and also HUD.
Right. So Fitz brings the money angle, the massive unaccounted for money. It's interesting how these three perspectives, they aren't presented as contradictory, are they? They're almost weirdly complementary. Fitz's analysis of what she calls a financial coup provides the immense off-the-books funding. Farrell's narrative offers this sinister origin story, remnants of the Third Reich's advanced research. And then Dolan's work describes the ultimate manifestation. A secret space program, a civilization, maybe decades, centuries ahead of us. It's almost like they collaboratively built this seamless, if disturbing, story.
That's a good way to put it. The narrative weaves them together.
So to truly understand the claimed genesis, the birth of this breakaway idea, we have to go back. Back to 1947, specifically the National Security Act. This was a monumental restructuring of the U.S. military and intelligence apparatus. It was a direct response to perceived intelligence failures, like Pearl Harbor, and the huge challenges of fighting World War II. Its publicly stated purpose was pretty straightforward: ensure future U.S. security.
Yeah, this act was a huge deal. It created cornerstone institutions we still live with today. The Department of Defense merging the old War and Navy departments, the National Security Council, the NSC, which is the president's main forum for security stuff, and Most critically for this hypothesis, the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA.
Right. And the legal framework for secrecy embedded within this act.
Mm.
That's absolutely key to the breakaway theory.
Mm-hmm.
The CIA, for instance, was tasked with advising the NSC, correlating intelligence, and performing, get this, such other functions and duties related to intelligence affecting the national security as the National Security Council may from time to time direct.
Mm-hmm. That's the clause.
That seemingly ambiguous clause. Proponents see that as the statutory basis for covert operations, things that could go way beyond public oversight.
And what's more, the Act stipulated that the Director of Central Intelligence, the DCI, even if they were a military officer, would be subject to no supervision, control, restriction, or prohibition, military or otherwise, in their duties. That effectively centralized immense secretive power right within the executive branch, with severely limited congressional oversight, especially back then.
Okay, so it's easy to see how the Act created structures for secrecy and power. That makes sense. But the crucial question for this theory is, how do proponents make the leap? How do they argue this specific government reorganization actually became the birthplace of a separate civilization? Where's that conspiratorial jump?
Well, a prime example, a really paradigmatic one they point to, is the whole Majestic 12 or MJ-12 affair. Remember those documents that surfaced back in the 80s? They alleged MJ-12 was this secret committee established by President Truman himself in 1947 to manage a crashed alien spacecraft and its occupants from Roswell, New Mexico.
Roswell.
And get this timing.
Yeah.
The alleged crash happened in July 1947, the very same month the National Security Act was signed into law.
Wow. Okay, the timing is suggestive in their narrative. And that purported Truman forcible memo directly linked this new institutional framework, the one from the Act, to managing an extraterrestrial secret. Now, we have to mention the FBI later declared the MJ-12 documents completely bogus.
Absolutely. That's crucial context.
But for the breakaway theory, the narrative structure of this story is profoundly significant. It doesn't actually matter if MJ-12 was real. It served as a template.
Exactly. It established a powerful template.
Oh.
A world-altering secret, right? Something too big for public disclosure, managed by a clandestine group, operating in the legal shadows created or perceived to be created by the National Security Act. This interpretation effectively recasts the Act. It's not just a government reorganization anymore. They frame it as a legal singularity, a point from which truly unaccountable power could emerge.
Right. So the logic, as they present it, goes like this.
Yeah.
The Act created a kind of container, maybe, with ambiguous legal boundaries. A secret of immense magnitude, maybe alien tech, maybe advanced Nazi science, whatever, then filled this container. And this, they argued, demanded a level of secrecy, funding, autonomy, far beyond the Act's public intent, necessitating its own budget, its own R&D, its own security, its own rules, completely independent of constitutional oversight.
Precisely. Thus, the 1947 Act is framed not just as creating secret agencies like the CIA, but as the actual legal foundation for a state within a state. This entity, fueled by its profound secret, could then, theoretically, expand beyond constitutional limits and achieve de facto sovereignty, essentially become its own hidden nation-state.
Okay, that sets the stage. Let's talk about what this alleged civilization looks like, its anatomy. One of the most audacious claims, and maybe its very foundation, is its control over a truly vast, unaccountable economy. This is where the money, or the lack of track money, really starts to matter.
It really does. Catherine Austin Fitts, working with economist Mark Skidmore, claims to have identified, get ready for this, $21 trillion.
Trillion.
Yes, $21 trillion in undocumentable or unauthorized spending just within the DoD and HUD between 1998 and 2015 alone.
To put that in perspective, that's just astronomical. More than the entire U.S. national debt at the time, wasn't it?
It's a staggering figure.
And proponents don't see this as just, sloppy accounting or errors. They view it as a deliberate financial coup d'etat, a systematic transfer of public wealth into a clandestine financial system. This black budget allegedly funds everything. Deep underground military bases, maybe a secret space program, often using complex financial schemes like those HUD-backed Ginnie Mae investments to hide the trail.
Complex instruments.
So the key takeaway here isn't just about a black budget, as big as that is. It's the assertion that these unimaginable, unaccounted-for funds could fundamentally redefine power. It's not just government secrecy. It's presented as the financial bedrock for a parallel sovereignty, effectively turning public wealth into a private government's war chest.
Yeah.
It's a chilling thought, really. How do you even begin to hold something like that accountable, assuming it exists?
Joseph P. Farrell, he provides a deeper historical origin for this hidden finance. Going back to his Nazi international idea, he claims this post-WWII network set up a global financial system from secure bases, maybe South America, elsewhere, capitalized by war plunder, like the infamous Operation Golden Lily, and even Nazi counterfeiting operations, like Operation Bernhard. He even implicates institutions like the Vatican Bank in this alleged network.
Okay, so Farrell adds this historical layer, this sort of dark seed money idea. So if we pull this together, the theory posits this multi-trillion-dollar financial architecture, operating completely independently, no constitutional appropriations, no public oversight. This isn't just about secret government programs anymore. It elevates the breakaway entity, in the theory, to a truly sovereign power. Like you said, essentially a private government with its own vast economy.
This hidden financial system, then, becomes the breakaway civilization's economic declaration of independence. It's what enables all the other aspects of its alleged existence, separating it from our known world.
All right, let's shift gears. Buckle up, maybe. Because the technological claims here are, well, they're truly out of this world, sometimes literally. The most spectacular assertion is the breakaway civilization's technological supremacy, said to be not just years, but decades, maybe even centuries, ahead of the public domain.
Richard Dolan is really central to this claim. He describes a secret space program, an SSP, that is radically advanced and increasingly separate. And proponents suggest that many of the unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, that we hear so much about today, maybe they're actually sightings of these secret human craft, not necessarily extraterrestrial vehicles.
Right. That's a key twist in the theory. The UFOs might be us, or at least some of us. And support for this idea, they say, comes from alleged whistleblower testimony, analysis of those vast black budget expenditures we just talked about, and also just the sheer anomalous flight characteristics of UAPs, things that seem to defy conventional physics.
Exactly.
Even recent Pentagon moves, declassifying some military space programs, proponents interpret that as a kind of limited disclosure, maybe designed to deter rivals like China or Russia, hinting at something much bigger kept hidden.
A strategic leak, perhaps. And this profound technological gap is supposedly maintained by revolutionary suppressed energy and propulsion systems. We're talking theoretical, maybe actual, things like anti-gravity, zero-point energy, maybe even working cold fusion, things out of science fiction.
Okay, where'd they supposedly get this super science?
Well, the origin stories vary within the theory, often attributed to reverse engineering non-human technology, maybe from events like the alleged Roswell crash, or sometimes rediscovering lost knowledge from ancient, perhaps technologically advanced human civilizations, Atlantis, that sort of thing.
So ET tech are ancient secrets.
Yeah.
Got it. And beyond just getting around fast, the breakaway civilization allegedly possesses a formidable arsenal of next-generation weaponry. Joseph P. Farrell, again, has written extensively on what he calls geophysical weapons.
Yes.
These are technologies supposedly designed to manipulate the environment, triggering earthquakes, tsunamis, maybe steering hurricanes, allowing for covert attacks with what they call plausible deniability. So basically they're saying a hurricane could be an act of war. My mind is sort of reeling, trying to wrap around that level of alleged control.
It's a profound claim, and a foundational tenet of this entire theory is that this breakaway entity operates entirely outside the legal frameworks of mainstream society. It's described quite starkly as literally separate and not subject to the laws of the existing ones.
Okay, so if this breakaway truly exists outside our laws, what does that mean for their own ethical framework? I mean, is it just a moral vacuum? Or do they operate under a completely different set of principles?
The theory suggests the latter.
This implies a total rejection of our constitutional and international law, establishing its own distinct parallel jurisdiction.
Right, and they would likely operate under what's called a utilitarian or consequentialist ethical system, but taken to an extreme, meaning they'd make decisions based purely on outcomes, the greatest good for the greatest number, perhaps, or more likely, the greatest good for their chosen few.
Even if it involves actions we'd consider illegal or, frankly, immoral in the mainstream world.
Yes, like siphoning public funds, covert warfare. These actions would be justified internally by an appeal to some higher purpose, maybe the long-term survival of a select portion of humanity, or managing some catastrophic global threat that we don't even know about.
That framing actually inverts the classic political concept of the state of exception, doesn't it?
It does.
Normally, a sovereign power might temporarily suspend law for emergency. But the breakaway civilization is theorized to have made a permanent, unilateral declaration of its own exemption. It doesn't suspend law for the mainstream. It simply operates in a perpetual state of exception for itself. It's a fascinating twist on how power could be wielded, theoretically.
And this leads to a really critical conceptual shift in the theory. The mainstream population, us, is reframed not as citizens with rights, but as an asset to be managed or a threat to be contained. This parallel legal system isn't just about having different rules. It's framed as a fundamental seizure of sovereignty against the very society that supposedly birthed it.
Okay, let's talk about how these two alleged civilizations interact, the interface of control and exploitation. So within this hypothesis, the relationship is described as starkly hierarchical, exploitive. Mainstream society that's us is positioned as just, a resource-rich environment, to be managed and harvested.
Yeah, and the most direct exploitation, as we discussed, is economic. That siphoning of trillions via the black budget effectively turns the public economy into an unwitting, massive tax base for this hidden entity.
But the theory suggests it goes beyond just money. It reaches into human capital. Earth, they claim, is seen as a kind of proving ground, a genetic reservoir, where maybe talented individuals are identified and recruited into the secret world, while less desirable segments might be used for more menial purposes, or even disturbingly, the theory includes ideas like slave labor. It's a pretty dark vision of how humanity, or parts of it, might be viewed.
It's very dark, and it also aligns with some more fringe survivalist models, like the old-WWII theory, which predicts the eventual collapse of industrial civilization. In that kind of scenario, an elite, technologically advanced group would logically try to secure essential resources and, well, manage the larger population's decline.
Right, and that alleged network of deep underground and undersea doomsday bunkers, the ones supposedly funded by the black budget, they're presented as the physical manifestation of exactly that survival strategy,
Precisely.
ensuring the elite's continuity during some near-extinction event while, leaving the rest of us surface dwellers to our fate.
And artificial intelligence, AI, is theorized to be the ultimate tool for managing and controlling this primary civilization, for ensuring its continued subjugation and, crucially, its ignorance.
This draws heavily on real-world concerns about AI, doesn't it? Mass surveillance.
Absolutely.
We see examples like ubiquitous facial recognition, predictive analytics, even China's social credit system. Those provide a chilling, maybe plausible blueprint for how a global invisible control system could operate.
And a key strategy mentioned in the hypothesis is the complete management of the information environment, controlling what people see and believe. This connects directly to things like the dead internet theory, which posits that the internet is increasingly dominated by bots and AI-generated content, not real human interaction.
Right. And within the breakaway framework, this isn't just some random trend. It's seen as a deliberate psychological operation. A psyop. AI is allegedly used to generate content, create synthetic consensus, manipulate social media trends, drown out dissenting voices, basically transforming the entire internet into an instrument of mass social engineering, controlling the narrative on a vast scale.
And this sophisticated control system, if it existed, would allow the breakaway elite to effectively disengage from the messy day-to-day management of the surface world. The mainstream world essentially becomes a kind of self-regulating resource farm, governed by algorithms that keep things stable enough for exploitation. AI, in this theory, serves as the technological bridge, enabling the elite to transition fully to a truly separate, autonomous civilization, leaving the old world behind, managed by code.
Okay, wow, that's a lot to take in. So we've walked through the core ideas, the anatomy, the control mechanisms of this hypothesis. Now, to critically assess it, it seems really useful to compare it with a more mainstream concept we often hear about, the deep state. How do they differ?
That's a great comparison to make. In mainstream political science, the deep state generally refers to something quite different. It's usually understood as an enduring network of unelected officials within the military, intelligence agencies, the civil service, people who can influence or sometimes resist elected leaders due to their position and longevity. It acknowledges institutional inertia, bureaucratic interests. It's really about entrenched bureaucracy having influence.
Right. But academic critiques sharply diverge from the more conspiratorial, malevolent cabal interpretation that you often see online or in populist rhetoric.
Oh, completely.
Scholars tend to argue the U.S. system, for all its flaws, is largely transparent, or at least traceable. It's fragmented, non-monolithic, often defensive, acting more as a bulwark, not a battering ram, against executive overreach rather than some unified, shadowy force driving its own agenda.
Yeah, someone like Stephen Walt, a well-known political scientist, suggests what some call the Deep State is actually more like a bipartisan foreign policy elite.
Hmm.
These people operate quite openly, their influence stemming from shared ideologies, career paths, think tanks, not some secret conspiracy. He argues the deep state narrative is often just a rhetorical tool used by populist leaders to, deflect criticism or explain away failures.
So applying that kind of critique to the breakaway hypothesis, it reveals a profound difference in scale, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Night and day.
The breakaway hypothesis goes way, way beyond mere bureaucratic influence or an entrenched elite arguing over policy. It posits a separate sovereignty, a distinct technological and economic reality that's completely outside our known world. It's a fundamentally different order of claim.
Totally. And from a standard political science perspective, phenomena like that claimed $21 trillion in unaccounted spending or highly classified military programs. They are more plausibly explained, though perhaps less dramatically, by things like extreme bureaucratic dysfunction, intense interagency rivalry, opaque black box budgeting practices, lack of oversight, and yes, even outright fraud within the existing state structure.
Rather than needing to invoke a unified, transcendent, sovereign parallel civilization pulling all the strings from behind the curtain.
Exactly. Those explanations, while still deeply concerning, don't require the massive leap to a separate civilization.
Okay, and what about looking at this from a different angle, say a sociological perspective? How does this narrative function?
Well, from that view, the breakaway civilization theory functions as a really powerful modern myth.
A myth. Explain that.
Well, conspiracy narratives in general, they often offer these comprehensive, sometimes overly simplistic explanations for events that feel complex, threatening, or chaotic. Their appeal is often strongest among individuals who feel a sense of powerlessness, maybe social anxiety, or have a deep distrust in official institutions and narratives.
And the idea of a hidden group controlling events, even if they're malevolent, it can paradoxically provide a sense of order.
Exactly. It transforms random suffering or complex systemic problems into something caused by deliberate, malevolent design, something that can, at least theoretically, be understood, named, and perhaps even combated. It gives people a framework, a sense of agency, even if illusory.
As we were prepping this, I was struck by how the narrative structure has these almost uncanny parallels with ancient Gnosticism.
That's a really insightful point. The parallels are quite striking. In Gnosticism, you often find this concept of radical dualism, a sharp division between a corrupt, fallen, controlled mainstream world, often seen as a kind of material prison, and a hidden, transcendent, pure reality.
Right. And in the breakaway theory, you have the corrupt, controlled mainstream society versus this hidden, technologically superior reality. The parallel is clear.
Then there's the Gnostic emphasis on secret knowledge, or gnosis itself. The belief that understanding the truth about this hidden reality is the crucial first step toward liberation or enlightenment.
Which mirrors how understanding the truth about the breakaway civilization is presented as the key to awakening from the manipulated reality.
Precisely. And you also see the idea of an elite elect. This applies both to the breakaway civilization itself, who supposedly possess the ultimate knowledge and power, and also, interestingly, to the researchers and whistleblowers who uncover and share the secret. They become the bearers of gnosis for those ready to awaken from the mainstream slumber.
The theory also seems to align with principles of technocracy, doesn't it? And elite theory, where governance isn't by democratic consent, but by technical experts whose legitimacy comes purely from their superior knowledge and capabilities.
Absolutely, it blends all these elements. So this synthesis really creates what you might call a techno-Gnostic myth. It takes the ancient Gnostic framework of, flawed material world, hidden truth, an evil or incompetent creator figure, the demiurge, salvation through secret knowledge, and it updates it for the modern technological age. The spiritual realm is replaced by a technologically realized reality, deep underground bases, outer space colonies. The flawed demiurge is replaced by the fake public state or the mainstream power structures. And gnosis becomes understanding suppressed physics, hidden finance, secret history.
Wow. So that techno-Gnostic framework really helps explain its potent appeal as a modern myth. It provides this comprehensive, almost quasi-spiritual explanation for those pervasive feelings of alienation, powerlessness, and suspicion that many people experience today.
I think that's a key part of its resonance, yes. It offers answers, however unconventional. So, if we try to connect all of this back to the bigger picture, The breakaway civilization hypothesis really stands out as this coherent, maybe internally consistent, all-encompassing narrative. It genuinely attempts to explain many deep anxieties and apparent anomalies of the modern world we live in.
Yeah, it effectively synthesizes these incredibly disparate elements that we've talked about, the 1947 National Security Act, those staggering allegations of a multi-trillion-dollar shadow economy, persistent UFO sightings, the rapid advancement of potentially disruptive tech like AI. It pulls them all together into a single unified theory. And the narrative arc itself is compelling, isn't it?
It is.
A secret state, born from Cold War fears, capitalized by hidden finance, develops world-changing tech, achieves de facto sovereignty, and then manages mainstream society like a resource, using AI and perception management to maintain dominance. It's a grand story, whether you buy into it or not.
Which raises that important question again. Why do narratives like this gain so much traction? Why do people find them compelling? The source material we looked at suggests its explanatory power lies less in its objective, verifiable truth, and more in its ability to offer a grand narrative, a story that connects seemingly unrelated dots in a way that provides answers, especially when mainstream explanations feel inadequate or untrustworthy.
Right. For example, UFOs suddenly aren't just strange lights, they become secret human craft, proof of the hidden tech.
Mhm.
Missing government funds aren't just incompetence or bureaucratic waste, they're deliberately diverted to build this new world for the chosen few.
Mm-hmm.
Political corruption, societal dysfunction, they stop being complex problems with messy causes and become symptoms of this hidden control system pulling the strings. The theory provides a clear, albeit conspiratorial, answer to that feeling of why does the world feel so broken or unjust, especially for those who've lost faith in mainstream institutions.
And ultimately, the proliferation of such narratives, whether it's specifically the breakaway civilization or a belief in a malevolent deep state, it has profound implications for civil society. A belief system like this is fundamentally corrosive. It eats away at the social trust, the shared factual basis that are absolutely required for a functioning democracy to even operate.
Yeah, it posits a reality that's so fractured, isn't it?
Yeah.
Between the knowing and the unknowing, the controllers and the controlled, the
Yeah.
real civilization and the fake one. That common ground, reasoned debate, collective action based on shared facts, they just become almost impossible.
Communication breaks down.
Its ultimate power, perhaps, resides in its capacity to construct this compelling, internally consistent parallel reality for its adherents, a worldview from which our mainstream society appears as little more than a hollow, deceptive facade. So, wrapping this up, how does knowing about this hypothesis, understanding its structure and its claims, change your perception of the information you encounter every day? Something to think about.